Hello and welcome back to another video. I know it's been some time, but I've been brainstorming new ideas, and one idea that I got was show everyone how to use this thing. If you don't know what this is the Calibrated Sculk Sensor. Not to be confused with the normal Sculk Sensor, as if I can type. The normal Sculk Sensor looks like that. And the difference is what the Calibrated Sculk Sensor does compared to the normal Sculk Sensor is, as you can see right here, if I move around, it's going to detect it no matter what, regardless. But if I place this down, this one's also going to detect it, but as you can see over here, it is not. So what you can do is you can specify what type of sounds you want the sensor to pick up. So right now I have it set to a bow. Let me just clear this one so it doesn't keep going. No, I'll just create a new one. The difference, the main reason why I want to show off the Calibrated Sculk Sensor so bad is because you can now wirelessly transmit sounds using the amethyst block. So if you're wondering what the amethyst block is actually used for in this, you see how this is set to 3? If I grab myself a crossbow real quick, or a bow, they both work. If I was to load my crossbow right next to it, let go, it detects it. Same thing with a bow. If you shoot, it detects it. Whereas I could just do this, and regardless if I walk around, it will activate it. So let me just hook up a comparator and a lamp to this. Hook up you. So you can see this lamp is always active, unless I stop moving. Where if I shoot this in between, it will record the sound. Which means you can build systems like this, to where if I was to load the crossbow now, it will travel across all of these sculk sensors, shoot a firework up in the air. Be warned, if you do set up a system like this, to where you do want to turn lights on for like an extended period away, I wouldn't recommend messing with the tick speed unless you know how to fix it, because as you can see, I'll set it to 4 right now. Now with the tick speed set to 4, if I shoot now, it will go all the way down, but the delay is too much to where it will just consistently go off, because it's taking too long. By the time the firework shoots, the sculk sensor is already reset. One thing you can do to change this is, if you don't want to shoot this, let me just break it. If you don't want it to shoot, you can easily just not have it shoot. And I'll go back over here. Do that. See, it goes all the way down, and it turns on for a brief moment. Now, if you would like to loop something like this, you want to take this and put it into a system kind of like this over here. Which, what this is doing is it is constantly looping the sound, and I'll show you how in just a moment. What it's doing is these sculk sensors are set to blocks turning on and off, so pistons, doors, trapdoors, and these are looking for this sound. So whenever this sound turns on, it activates this sculk sensor, which makes it travel down the line, activating both of these dispensers. One's placing a block and one's removing, which they both swap it, but you can see the system that I'm doing here. There's at least one block placed at all times, which when that block breaks from the dispenser, as you can see, this is just powdered snow buckets. Once it's auto-placed or auto-broken, this will detect it, which brings it back down the line and activates the piston once more, which activates this again, and it loops the whole sound back and forth. So you can now have wireless loops. I know there's wires here, but you don't need wires. You can set it up in some other way, like a comparator, for instance. Or you could just have it do this. If I do this, and let me grab a torch. Actually, no, let me grab a lever. Place the lever right beside it, quickly flick it, and it starts to loop over again. You can do the same thing with this too, but I just have it set up so it's constantly breaking and replacing. Now you have probably been sitting here wondering, what is this little setup? Let me just grab all this. Once again, I actually set it up over here. As you can see, they're both detecting, well, they can both detect jumping, but only this one detects walking. The reason that works like that is if, let's say I grab a sculk sensor in my inventory, hover over it, you can see a little chart right there, and I'll leave the resource pack in the description if you care enough to use it. But those are all these sound IDs. So let's say I wanted this to detect block turning on, which is 10. I can now grab myself a piston and a lever, place it right here, and it also works with levers, apparently. Didn't know that. You can, every time you turn this on, it's going to activate, which you can then use that as a loop in itself if you would like. If you set up a system to double. Mine is turning off, so if I turn that off, it's just going to loop, which is now saving. It's not saving a sound, but it is looping a said sound to where it will always be in this spot, which this is now a redstone loop. I know there are many ways of doing a redstone loop, but this, for farms, for example, if I were to set this system back up, let me just boom, 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 set it up, 5 away? I think it's 10, actually. 5, 10. Now set up the lectern, and then the calibrated sculk sensor. Now this is set to 2, which is a snowball. So if I grab myself a snowball real quick, throw it against the block, as you can see, it travels all the way down, turns a lamp on, and activates the farm. I recommend setting up like a wool barrier just in case, so that the pistons going off don't activate the sculk sensor again. Even though they're all set to 2, what ends up happening is the item hits the ground, which causes the sculk sensor to go off. So if I throw this, it's an entity hitting the ground, so this will just constantly be going unless you place this wool wall here. If I set this down a tick, it would have been a constant fucking loop, so we don't want that. Set up power lines like this. It's not exactly the way I wanted it to, but if I throw this here, you can see it travels. It'll hit that one first, and it transmits over to that one. So it's a lot. I haven't learned much myself. I am still experimenting with it. But for the most part, that is what you're gonna get. Going. Now if I fly away, let me actually set my render distance to 2. Then fly. Up here. Then if I set my render distance back up. See, I passed it. Now if I come back, sometimes the sounds will unload, which causes machines to break. This one thankfully did not break, so you can set this up as a dummy redstone signal, kind of, and have it constantly run whether you're out of the chunk or not. I'm not sure if it'll work like that. I've never tested it. I might test it in another world of mine, but if I was to set up like another loop and just leave it, it has a possible chance of just clearing. And Sculk sensors do not like the /clone command, so if you're trying to be cheeky and copying a redstone build, it's probably not going to work very well. Yeah, so that's all for calibrated sculk sensors that I have found out. Another thing I forgot to mention was the amethyst blocks. There is a main reason why all of these machines are using amethyst blocks, because they added a new function to amethyst blocks with the calibrated sculk sensor, where if I come over here and let's say I get rid of all of these. Remember, this is the bow one, so let me just grab a crossbow. Let me bring it back here, load it up. If I were to aim or load it right next to me, it doesn't actually carry over the sound. So what amethyst blocks do is they take in whatever sound is coming from the sculk sensor. You can put it on top or bottom, doesn't matter. But it's taking whatever's being put into the sculk sensor and it pushes out further like a repeater does, which the sound goes into the sculk sensor then throws the sound back into the amethyst block, and the amethyst block broadcasts the same exact sound to the next sculk sensor contraption for the wireless redstone effect. But that's about all I know right now about calibrated sculk sensors. I hope you all enjoyed. I tried my best to get as much information on them as I could without watching tutorials. I watched one tutorial on how to get it running, but the rest of it I've just been experimenting with on my own. And I recommend you do it too. If you want to watch a tutorial, go ahead. But I'm going to link to the video that I watched down below, which was actually by Mumbo, which Mo's a good guy. I like Mumbo. But yeah, see ya.